It was November 22nd, 1963, a sunny Friday afternoon in Dallas, Texas. The President of the United States, John F. Kennedy, was riding through the streets in an open-top limousine, waving, smiling, full of life. And then, in just 6 seconds, everything changed. 3 shots rang out. The president slumped forward, and within minutes, the most powerful man in the world was dead. What followed was not just a tragedy, it was a mystery, one that the world is still trying to solve. Over 60 years later, today, we are going inside the assassination of JFK. The facts, the questions, and the secrets that the government kept locked away for decades. Stay with me, because this story goes much deeper than you think. Who was JFK? To understand why this assassination shook the entire world, you first need to understand who John F. Kennedy was. John Fitzgerald Kennedy was the 35th President of the United States. Elected in 1960, he was young, charismatic, and full of bold ideas. He pushed for civil rights at a time when America was deeply divided. He stood up to the Soviet Union during the Cuban Missile Crisis, a terrifying standoff that brought the world to the edge of nuclear war. He launched the Apollo space program, with the audacious dream of putting a man on the moon. To millions of Americans, JFK wasn't just a politician, he was hope. He was the symbol of a new, modern America. But behind that smile, behind that confidence, he had powerful enemies, political rivals who wanted him gone, military generals who disagreed with his decisions, the CIA Cuban exiles who felt he had abandoned them, and some historians say, even the organized mob. So when the shots were fired on that November afternoon, the question that haunted the entire nation was simple: who wanted him dead, and why? The day of the assassination, November 22nd, 1963, Dallas, Texas. President Kennedy had arrived in the city for a political visit. The motorcade route through Dallas had been published in local newspapers the day before. To this day, that detail alone raises eyebrows. At exactly 12:30 in the afternoon, the presidential motorcade turned onto Elm Street, passing directly in front of a 7-story red brick building known as the Texas School Book Depository. Thousands of people lined the streets, cheering, waving, taking photographs. It was a beautiful day. And then the shots came. According to the official government investigation, known as the Warren Commission, a man named Harvey Oswald had positioned himself on the 6th floor of the book depository. He fired 3 shots. The first shot missed. The second shot struck both President Kennedy and Texas Governor John Connally, who was seated directly in front of him. And the third shot was fatal. It struck President Kennedy in the head. At 1 p.m. on November 22nd, 1963, John Fitzgerald Kennedy was pronounced dead at Parkland Memorial Hospital. He was 46 years old. Within hours of the shooting, Harvey Oswald was arrested, but before he could stand trial, before he could say a single word in court, he was shot dead, on live television, in front of the entire watching world, by a man named Jack Ruby. And just like that, the only suspect in the assassination of a United States president was silenced, forever. The Warren Commission. In the days that followed the assassination, President Lyndon B. Johnson established an official government investigation. It was called the Warren Commission. After months of investigation, their conclusion, released in 1964, was clear and straightforward. Harvey Oswald acted alone. He fired 3 shots from the 6th floor window. There was no conspiracy. Case closed. But here is where the story gets complicated, because almost immediately, researchers, journalists, eyewitnesses, and even members of the United States Congress refused to accept that conclusion. They looked at the evidence, and they found questions. Serious questions. Questions that could not be easily answered. Questions that, to this day, have never been fully resolved. The unanswered questions. Let's go through them, one by one. The first question, the magic bullet. The Warren Commission concluded that a single bullet, just one, caused 7 separate wounds. It entered Kennedy's upper back, exited through his throat, then somehow struck Governor Connally in the chest, passed through his wrist, and finally lodged in his thigh. Critics called it the magic bullet theory, because for that single bullet to cause all 7 wounds, it would have had to change direction multiple times in midair. Forensic experts have debated this for over 60 years, and to this day, no clear consensus has ever been reached. The second question, the Grassy Knoll. Multiple eyewitnesses standing at Dealey Plaza that day reported something that directly contradicted the official story. They said the shots came from in front of the motorcade, from a grassy hill to the right side of Elm Street, not from behind, not from the book depository. And then there is the Zapruder film. Abraham Zapruder was an ordinary man standing on the sidewalk that day with a home movie camera. He captured the entire assassination on film. When you watch that footage, you can see Kennedy's head move backward and to the left at the moment of impact. If the shot had come from behind, from the book depository, his head should have moved forward. If shots came from more than one direction, that means more than one shooter. And if there was more than one shooter, that means a conspiracy. The third question, who was Oswald really? Lee Harvey Oswald was not an ordinary man. He had defected to the Soviet Union and lived there for nearly 3 years. He had connections to pro-Castro groups in America, but at the same time, he also had connections to anti-Castro organizations, which makes absolutely no sense, unless he was working for someone. Some investigators have long believed that Oswald was not a lone gunman acting out of personal rage. They believe he may have been an intelligence asset, working for the CIA, the FBI, or another government agency. If that is true, then the question becomes even more disturbing. Was he set up? Was he used? Was he a patsy? The fourth question, Jack Ruby. The man who shot Oswald, Jack Ruby, was a nightclub owner in Dallas with well-documented connections to organized crime figures. When asked why he killed Oswald, Ruby gave inconsistent answers at different times. He told the Warren Commission he wanted to spare Jackie Kennedy the pain of a long public trial. But many investigators believed something very different. They believed Jack Ruby silenced Oswald on behalf of someone far more powerful, someone who could not afford to let Oswald speak. Jack Ruby was convicted of murder, but he died of cancer in January 1967, before he could ever give full, open testimony. Another door permanently closed. The fifth question, the sealed files, perhaps the most suspicious detail of all. Thousands of government documents related to the JFK assassination were classified as top secret, hidden from the American public for decades. Some of those files were finally released in 2017, 2018, and again in 2022. But even today, many documents remain withheld. The government still cites national security as the reason. Think about that for a moment. A presidential assassination from 1963, and the government is still hiding files in 2024. Why would you hide evidence about a case you said was already solved 60 years ago? What is in those files? We still do not fully know. The main theories. Over the decades, historians and researchers have proposed several theories about who may have been involved beyond Oswald. It is important to be clear, these are theories based on historical research and circumstantial evidence. They are not confirmed facts, but they are worth understanding. Some researchers believe that certain elements within the CIA may have been involved. Kennedy had humiliated the agency by refusing to provide air support during the failed Bay of Pigs invasion of Cuba in 1961. The anger within the CIA was real and well documented. Others point to organized crime. Kennedy's brother, Attorney General Robert Kennedy, was aggressively going after the mob at the time. Some historians believe that certain crime figures may have decided to retaliate by targeting the president himself. Given the intense tensions of the Cold War, others suspected foreign involvement from the Soviet Union or from Cuba. However, no credible direct evidence has ever linked any foreign government to the assassination. And then there is what may be the most important fact of all. In 1979, 16 years after the assassination, the United States House Select Committee on Assassinations released its official findings. Their conclusion? President Kennedy was probably assassinated as a result of a conspiracy. Those are not the words of a conspiracy theorist. Those are the words of an official United States congressional investigation. Even the government itself acknowledged that the full story had never been told. More than 60 years have passed since that November afternoon in Dallas. Generations have been born. Presidents have risen and fallen. The Cold War ended. The world changed completely, and yet, the assassination of John F. Kennedy remains one of the most examined, most debated, and most haunting unsolved mysteries in modern history. Here is what we know for certain. A young, beloved president was killed in broad daylight, in front of thousands of witnesses. The only suspect was arrested, and then murdered before he could speak a single word in court.